Let's stay on education because it may be the boldest intervention in the education sector, but it puts a huge strain on the national budget. That's the view of Asante Otunfosi II, the monarch who was speaking at Memphis University in the United States over the weekend, claims that government's flagship educational policy is also creating further challenges in job creation as government is now saddled with the responsibility to provide jobs for the teeming graduates. We can listen to Otunfo address the gathering.
Additionally, chiefs have become the catalyst of economic development. As the custodians of the land, traditional authorities are vital not only in the acquisition of land for development, but as facilitators and direct partners in the promotion of investment and private enterprise, especially in our rural communities. When we ascended the Golden Stool 23 years ago, we proclaimed education as the ultimate priority of our reign. In furtherance of our priority, we established a foundation to support the education of children from poor backgrounds. It has become, so far, the largest private intervention in education in the country's history and has provided for students who would otherwise have been deprived of basic education, among them persons who have risen to serve as ministers of state and justices of the courts. Now the current government has introduced free education up to senior high school, which now ensures that all Ghanaian children from whatever background are guaranteed free education. Considering the value of education to the nation, this must be one of the boldest policies of the nation. But it also brings its challenges. It puts a huge strain on the national budget and raises further challenge about the creation of jobs for the increasing number of graduates. I'm sure the brilliant minds assembled here in this audience and beyond will be reassured that Ghana is on the right path, able to weather the storm and sustain its chosen democratic path, and deserves a fulsome support and collaboration from the United States of America. I look forward to initiating collaboration between your university here and our premier University of Science and Technology, the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Kumasi, in the sciences and entrepreneurship development.
So this afternoon on The Pulse, we're asking that question: how much has government spent on the implementation of the free senior high school policy, and is that beginning to be a drain on our national budget? Our research desk has some findings for you, and here you have that on your screens. In terms of the free SHS enrollment, is shot up from 800,000 all the way to 1.2 million between 2017 and 2020. But between 2020 and 2022, the number has shot up to 1.32 million in terms of enrollment. But what that means is that there's likely to be a significant jump in the figures this time around, and this year particularly, as government is doing some more enrollment. In fact, we're told that the figures have surged some more, and it's peaking somewhere at 1.6 million. But we also need to indicate this to you in terms of budgetary allocation. Where we stand now in 2022 is 2.3 billion cedis, but it started off with a 1.68 billion cedis allocation in 2019. Then we moved to 2.43 billion in terms of allocation, budgetary allocations to the free SHS policy in 2020. It dipped a bit in 2021 to 1.97, and then we're back again on that increasing trajectory of 2.3 billion cedis. But in terms of the allocation overall to the ministry itself, which is supervising that, or perhaps working hand in hand with the Office of the President in terms of allocation, you see a significant jump in the allocation to the Ministry of Education, which started somewhere around 12.9 billion cedis in 2019, dipped a bit to 11.6 in 2020, and then shot up to 17.8 in 2022. But if you compare that figure to what has been allocated out of that overall amount to the free senior high school policy, we're dealing with a jump from 1.68, then moved to 2.43, dipped a bit to 1.97 in 2021, and then we're back at 2.3 billion cedis. So that's the portion that the free SHS is taking out of the allocation to the Ministry of Education. But is it time to review the free education policy? That's the question we're asking this afternoon on the Pulse. Joining me now via Zoom is Kofi Asare, Executive Director for the Africa Education Watch. Thank you so much, sir, for your time. So here we are, concerns are being raised. And in fact, this is not the first time we're hearing of this concern as well. Professor Aite as well raised the concern that let's do targeting. But from your outfit, what's your position on whether or not we're going for a review?
Good afternoon to cherished audience. Exactly, this is not a new discussion, but it is a very, very important public interest issue that will keep recurring. Let me indicate that review of a policy is part of every policy's implementation, arrangement. Policies are reviewed either formatively or summatively or both. Formatively, you review a policy as you implement, and summatively, at the end of the policy, if you like, or at the end of a period, you review and then you strengthen implementation, ensure that the policy is very much tilted or positioned towards achieving its intended objective. So it is normal to have discussions around reviewing a policy like a free senior, especially when the policy is that impactful, having increased enrollment from about 880,000 in 2016-17 to about 1.3 million. That is huge. But the context for His Majesty's pronouncement is a reality. The reality is that we are a middle-income country, a lower one, and we don't have the luxury of abundant resources. We have scarce resources. And so whenever you are implementing a policy that has actually succeeded in increasing enrollment to the level of the free senior high school, 550,000 more children are in school, in secondary school. It means that two things are going to happen. The number of students completing secondary school and not being able to transit to tertiary are going to increase. And that is going to mean an increase in demand by secondary school graduates for jobs. Second is that you are going to increase opportunities for tertiary education and also increase demand for jobs after tertiary level. Now, these two increasing demands for jobs will have to be met with commensurate investment in the private sector, especially, and to a lesser extent in the public sector. How do you do this? You need cash. We don't have the cash. So if you don't have the cash, it is just within, it is logical that you consider how you are investing resources in the policy. So we have proposed at EduWatch that if the free senior high school is repositioned to focus only on students who attended public junior high schools, so that students who attend private junior high schools pay their own fees at the secondary school level, because the cost of private senior high school the cost of private junior high school education in a year is more than how much government pays for free senior high school. Government is paying an average of 1,500 cedis a year as school fees under the free senior high school. That's the average. The highest is 2,001, the lowest is about 1,002 for day and boarding respectively. So if you can pay more than 1,500 cedis a year for your junior high school 3 students to complete junior high school in a private school, then you shouldn't have a problem paying that same money when they are in senior high school. But that's how much government is paying. So if we are able to do that and allow only public school, junior high school graduates to enjoy a free senior high school, what we are going to do is that we are going to save at least $60 million. I'm talking of about 500 million Ghana cedis. We are going to save at least $60 million from the 2.3 billion cedis you mentioned, for instance, for this year. We are going to save close to 500 million Ghana cedis and channel that money into government's own job creation policies, so that as you train more and more at the secondary level, as the demand for post-secondary employment increases, you have some money to invest in job creation, both for the post-secondary graduates, for secondary graduates and also for tertiary graduates.
But then, Kofi, the question will come up. The question will come up as to how to go about the targeting. Targeting persons who are not able to afford to the fees at the senior high school level. That will be a very difficult task for the government to carry out, isn't it?
It is difficult for government to carry out it through, just like any other policy proposal, to review the free senior high school, because the free senior high school is seen by government and approached by government as a political promise, not a social intervention policy. But if you are looking at it as a social intervention or as a social intervention or a social policy, it is the easiest thing to do. I'm saying that the cost of junior high school education in a private school a year is more than 1,500 cedis. So if Kofi Asare is able to pay his ward's fees in junior high school 3 in a private school, why can't Kofi Asare afford that same 1,500 the next year when his child enters senior high school 1? You understand? So simply asking all public basic schools or all public basic school students to enjoy the free senior high school, because our public basic schools are attended by the poor and then the poorest of the poor. We know that. Then those who are able to afford private education, those who have a choice, and those who are paying at least 1,500 cedis a year as school fees in private schools for junior high school students, will now be asked to pay their senior high school fees, because their capacity to pay higher fees at the junior high school demonstrates that they have the capacity to continue paying fees at senior high school without necessarily, without their children dropping out of school. So it is not too difficult. We have all the data. We are in a digitized. We are in a digitized economy. We have gone far in digital financial inclusion. We have data on people's earnings. We have data on using the cash identification number. All this data is supposed to ensure that government has a credible basis to target its policies. Is that not why government is using this data to target, to deploy taxes like the e-levy? Yes. So government can project. Government has an idea about the income level of people. All that data is available now. But the point I'm making is that in the absence of that data, once you are able to pay more than 1,500 Ghana cedi school fees for your ward in junior high school 3, it is unconscionable for you to tell government that suddenly in senior high school 1, you can't raise that same 1,500 Ghana cedis. So all those who don't have money, who cannot afford private education, who take their children to public schools, should have the full benefit of enjoying senior high school education, free. But for those whose children attend private schools,
I'm sorry for cutting through, but the question is, what should be of priority to us as a nation, developing our human index, or perhaps waiting on citizens or perhaps parents to do so?
Developing human capital, but the human capital is not just developed by allowing everybody to go to school. It doesn't happen like that. You have to create opportunities for socioeconomic progression and transformation. So if you go to school and there are no jobs, I'm sorry, you are not developing a human capital. That is why I'm trying to strike a balance. That can we manage efficiently the little we have, so that a little more is used to support job creation for that same human capital development for which you are.
Okay, so but the question is, how do we go about it? What do you propose? Are we then going to create a new set of criteria for persons who will be able to enjoy the free senior high school policy?
As we sit here, there's a policy called LEAP. It's been running since President Kufuor's time. Only the poorest of the poor benefit from LEAP. You don't benefit and I don't benefit. Why? Because the Ministry of Gender has a means testing, criteria. Government has capacity to determine those who can pay senior high school fees and those who cannot. If government can administer LEAP for over 15 years in all districts in this country, and is able to directly send cash grants to the poorest of the poor in our society, it tells you that government has the capacity to determine those who can pay secondary school fees and those who can't. It shouldn't be used as an excuse. I'm saying that the only reason why it's an excuse is because government's approach to free senior high school is that of a political promise and not a social policy. But if we decide to approach free senior high school as a social policy like LEAP, as a social intervention policy like LEAP,
right,
we will be able to determine who can pay and who cannot pay easily.
Then. Right. Kofi, just hold on for me. Let's bring in Peter Notsu-Koto's ranking on the Education Committee in Parliament. Thank you, Honourable, for joining us. You've been following the discussion as well. Is this the time for us to try as much as possible to review the free senior high school policy?
That the time has even passed for a review of the program. As we all agree, it's a constitutional provision, and we all support the program of making senior high school education free for all. Yeah, but the point is the manner in which the program was implemented is what is giving us the challenge. It is taking so much toll on a public purse that if care is not taken, we will not be able to sustain it. So some of us have been of the view that the program needed to be reviewed and see how best we can make it cost effective, and then we make sure that the government does not spend every money that should have gone for entire education in the country going into only one sector. So if you look at the free senior high school, it takes between 1.5 billion to 2 billion a year. And that is big money which can do something else.
But why is the minority sounding as though the lives of these young ones do not really matter, particularly when it comes to education? Are we getting a wrong impression?
No. The issue, what we say is that free education at the secondary school, we started it on a progressively free approach. And we don't have any problem with government making it entirely free from wherever they took over from. But what we are saying is that the program as it is now, the way it is being run now, it is not cost effective. It is not helping because the cost involved is too high. And if we don't take time, we will not be able to sustain it. We will continue to be piling up debt year by year. Because as we are talking now, government is owing so much to contractors, that is food suppliers and all those things. So we need to sit down, look at the program, and see how best we can contribute towards its sustainability. So we support the program, but the management, the implementation is the problem.
Honorable, just hold the lines for me briefly. Kofi, and we've heard this word before, review. When it came up, the NPP, together with the government, said, well, that would mean a cancellation of the program. Is this the time we do away or perhaps just shy away from the politics of it and try and confront issues and look at the word review as it should be?
Well, objectively speaking, my perspective, is purely from the perspective of a policy practitioner, and that perspective varies. It's actually totally different from government's perspective. As I said, the government sees the free senior high school as a political promise. So the approach in implementing it is the approach government will adapt to jealously guard a political promise and fulfill same, especially when it is one that is high stakes, So to be honest with you, I don't expect government to review the policy. Government understands that the policy is very, very low in terms of cost efficiency, but I don't see government attempting to review it because, as I'm saying, government sees it as a political promise and not a social policy. It will take another government to review the free senior school policy and target it. Any review aimed at targeting the policy will never happen under this government because of the potentially political nature it is. And let's not forget that the MPP itself appreciates that one of the main reasons why it was voted into power and retained was the free senior high school policy. And that is one of the best proposals in their manifesto that has been implemented. So I don't think they would like to tinker with it at all. Yeah. But it's a discussion we must have because it must happen. Every policy undergoes review to perfect it, to improve its effectiveness and efficiency. And this review you're talking about will help it to be more efficient in terms of improving its cost efficiency, so that we can spend about 1.5 billion Ghana cedis a year in delivering the same policy, and then those spend about 500 or 600 million, in job creation, so that we help ourselves by reducing the high levels of unemployment, which is almost 14%, right, as we speak. But let's hope that as we continue to have the discussion, it broadens, the parameters for the policy. Options are discussed, and at a point in time, if I am proven wrong, and government masters the political will to say that, well, the model of the free senior high school is not financially sustainable because it is depriving, especially basic education, of its needed resources, and also other sectors of the economy, especially the aspects of the economy dealing with job creation. And for that matter, I want to
Right.
focus, target it, and then free more money for job creation or basic. Fine, but I don't think the government will review this policy.
Anyway,
Not this. Yeah.
let's see how that goes. Kofi Asare, I'm grateful that you've been able to join us. But let's wrap up with you, Honorable Notcho Kotui. So it appears that the review you're on the lookout for may not happen maybe anytime soon. So are you going to trigger some processes in Parliament as well to try and achieve this aim?
Well, it will be difficult to take any action in Parliament because the only issue is that when the budget comes, maybe that's where we'll have to make it known to government and the Parliament that the government is spending so much on the free senior high school, and as a committee, we feel that there is too much. There's a need to look at it. But I know it will not fly because if it is a government policy, some of these things you find it very difficult to change it if it is not coming from the Minister of Education or the Finance Minister. So, as a Parliament or a committee, it will be difficult for us to make any change when the issue comes up because we have spoken about this several times and we have not received any support from the majority side. So it is only going to take the next government that moral courage to make a review of the program. As it is now, I am sure this government is not interested in making any program, any review. So we only have to keep our fingers crossed. When there's a change in government, then the review process will be put into force.
But the question is, if something should change about the free senior high school policy, what is that key aspect that we need to look at for you?
Yeah, if government is willing to do so, because if the government is not willing to do so, there's nothing anybody else can do. Several people in the education sector, NGOs, CSOs, they have called for a review. They are not receiving any attention from government in that direction. So it will be difficult for Parliament to initiate any change or review process by itself. It must come from government. Yeah.
I'm grateful. Honorable Peter Notcho Kotui, ranking on the Education Committee of Parliament. This is The Pulse. When we return, we'll bring you some more stories. Please stay.